There's a moment, a quiet one, when you feel the urge to prove yourself, to say the right thing, to do the right thing, to make her notice you, approve of you, admire you. But every time you chase that approval, a small part of your power slips away. Respect is not earned through pleasing, it's commanded through presence. When you seek validation, you hand over the script of your worth to someone else, hoping they'll read it back to you kindly. But they never will, not in the way you need them to. Because validation that comes from the outside is always conditional, and conditional respect is never real. True respect is born from authenticity, not from the exhausting performance of trying to be liked, accepted, or admired. When a man shows up as who he truly is, flaws, strengths, uncertainties, and all, he radiates a quiet confidence that cannot be fabricated. Authenticity has an undeniable magnetism because it communicates truth. It tells others, without words, that you are comfortable in your own skin. This kind of comfort doesn't come from rehearsing lines or pretending to be someone more impressive, it comes from the courage to stand in your own reality. When you act from a place of authenticity, you no longer need to measure your worth against anyone else's expectations. You speak from your center, not from your insecurity, and people can feel the difference. Respect built on performance is fragile. It demands constant maintenance because it depends on approval. The moment you stop performing, it vanishes. But respect built on authenticity endures because it doesn't rely on external reinforcement. It's the difference between someone respecting your mask and someone respecting your essence. When you stop chasing validation, you stop editing yourself for acceptance, and that's when people start respecting you for your truth rather than your presentation. The irony is that the more we try to earn respect by acting impressive, the less respect we receive. People sense the disconnection, the subtle tension of someone who is trying too hard to be perceived a certain way. Real respect comes when you no longer need it as proof of your value. In relationships, authenticity is often mistaken for vulnerability, and vulnerability is misunderstood as weakness. But the opposite is true. It takes immense strength to be authentic in a world that rewards masks. When you show up honestly, you invite genuine connection. You no longer build relationships around the fear of rejection, but around mutual recognition. This kind of presence commands respect because it communicates emotional maturity, the ability to be real without the need to control perception. When a man embraces his authenticity, he sends a clear signal: I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to be real with you. That statement, even when unspoken, creates trust. Respect flows naturally toward someone who is authentic because authenticity signals integrity. It says you have nothing to hide and nothing to prove. It allows others to feel safe in your presence because they know where they stand. This sense of groundedness, of being at ease with who you are, is deeply attractive and deeply respected. When authenticity becomes your foundation, you no longer depend on validation to sustain your sense of worth. You carry it within you, quietly, unshakably. And that presence alone transforms how others respond to you. Seeking validation is a habit that quietly erodes your presence and diminishes your power in any relationship. When a man constantly looks outward for approval, he places the authority of his worth in someone else's hands. Every word, every gesture becomes measured against how it will be received rather than arising naturally from his own sense of self. This habit creates a subtle but persistent tension, an invisible leash that ties your confidence to someone else's perception. Over time, this reliance can make you appear less grounded, less capable of independent thought, and less trustworthy in the eyes of others. People intuitively sense when someone is seeking approval, and it changes the dynamic. Instead of standing as an equal, you appear tentative, pliable, or uncertain. The act of seeking validation often masquerades as care, attentiveness, or charm, but underneath it is a quiet anxiety. Every conversation, every decision becomes an opportunity to prove your value. You may over-explain, over-apologize, or over-perform, hoping that your effort will earn recognition or admiration. This creates an imbalance because your energy is directed outward, toward influencing perception, rather than inward, toward cultivating your own presence and clarity. The irony is that the more you try to gain respect or approval externally, the less respect you naturally command. People respond to certainty and self-assuredness, not to someone constantly looking for reassurance. Seeking validation also limits emotional intimacy. True connection grows from authenticity, from being willing to stand in your truth without expecting constant affirmation. When you constantly seek approval, interactions become transactional. Your worth seems contingent on pleasing, rather than existing fully. This subtly shifts the relationship from one of mutual respect to one where your sense of security depends on external feedback. That dependency is perceptible, even if unspoken, and it changes how others experience you. You may notice her tuning out or unconsciously holding you at a distance because the energy you radiate is rooted in need rather than presence. Releasing the need for validation does not mean detachment or indifference. It means reclaiming your authority over your own self-worth. When you stop measuring every word and action against how it will be received, you free yourself to act with confidence, clarity, and calm. This shift transforms interactions. You no longer perform to be liked, you engage because it aligns with who you are. The energy you emit changes from anxious or accommodating to steady, grounded, and magnetic. In that space, respect flows naturally. People are drawn not to someone who seeks their nod of approval but to someone who moves through the world with self-assured presence, someone whose sense of value originates within rather than from the reflection of another's gaze. Self-respect is the invisible language that teaches others how to treat you, and it does so without a single demand. It is a quiet force, unspoken yet unmistakable, that shapes every interaction, every boundary, every expectation in relationships. When a man embodies self-respect, he sets the standard for how others can engage with him. He does not need to enforce it through words or actions of insistence because it is felt intuitively. People mirror the energy they encounter. When someone stands firm in their own dignity, others naturally respond with consideration, regard, and, most importantly, respect. Conversely, when self-respect is absent or compromised, people often test boundaries, consciously or unconsciously, sensing that there is a gap in the framework of your authority over yourself. The process of cultivating self-respect begins internally, in the choices you make and the boundaries you uphold. It is not about controlling others or manipulating their perceptions, it is about making decisions aligned with your values, your principles, and your sense of integrity. When you honor yourself, your time, your energy, and your emotional truth, you communicate to the world that you are not negotiable. This does not mean rigid inflexibility, but rather a steadfast commitment to your own worth, which radiates outward. People instinctively respond to this presence, treating you not as someone who can be easily swayed, but as someone whose inner compass is reliable and grounded. Self-respect also reshapes dynamics in romantic or interpersonal connections. When a man demonstrates self-respect, he is less likely to tolerate behavior that undermines his dignity, more likely to speak with clarity, and more likely to maintain emotional boundaries. Women, in particular, notice the difference between a man who seeks to please and one who honors his own value. A man who knows his worth communicates it effortlessly, through tone, posture, decisions, and even the energy he brings to interactions. Respect is not demanded because it is already embodied. This embodiment creates an unconscious framework for attraction and admiration because it signals stability, integrity, and reliability, qualities that are universally compelling. The most profound aspect of self-respect is its independence from external validation. It does not fluctuate based on approval, praise, or criticism. It is not contingent on someone else's recognition. Instead, it originates internally, a deep understanding that your value is inherent and non-negotiable. When self-respect is lived authentically, it silently instructs others on how to treat you not through confrontation or assertion, but through the undeniable clarity of your presence, the boundaries you maintain, and the integrity with which you navigate every interaction. In essence, self-respect becomes a mirror. It reflects back the standard of regard that you already hold for your self-communication. Rooted in calm confidence has a transformative power in how others perceive and respond to you. It is not about using clever words, rehearsed lines, or manipulation. It is about speaking from a place of presence and self-assurance. When a man communicates from this grounded state, every word, every pause, every gesture carries weight. There is a subtle authority in calm confidence that cannot be faked, because it arises from the internal knowledge of one's own value. It signals that you are not desperate for approval, that you are not negotiating your worth with every sentence, and that your presence does not depend on the reaction of others. This kind of communication draws respect naturally because it communicates that you are complete within yourself. Many people confuse volume, urgency, or charm with influence, but the deepest form of connection comes from steadiness, clarity, and conviction. When you speak from calm confidence, you do not over-explain or justify yourself. You allow your words to carry their own weight. People feel your stability, they feel that you are anchored in your own truth. This presence is magnetic because it contrasts sharply with the typical flurry of anxious, validation-seeking behavior that pervades most interactions. Instead of pushing for recognition, you invite it organically by embodying certainty. Calm confidence communicates safety, reliability, and authority, all of which are qualities that naturally elicit respect and admiration. In romantic relationships, this type of communication changes the dynamic entirely. It signals that you are emotionally mature, that your intentions are clear, and that your boundaries are firm. Women, in particular, respond to a man who can express himself without defensiveness or overcompensation. It demonstrates that you are capable of holding space for yourself, for her, and for the relationship itself. This allows interactions to shift from negotiation and testing to understanding and resonance. Your calm, confident voice becomes a stabilizing force, one that communicates that you are not swayed by insecurity or fear. Calm confidence also transforms the way conflicts and disagreements are handled. Instead of reacting impulsively or defensively, a man grounded in this form of communication can articulate his thoughts and feelings without escalating tension. He can express boundaries clearly, convey desires authentically, and listen without judgment or distraction. This level of presence cultivates respect not through coercion or dominance, but through reliability, consistency, and emotional intelligence. People instinctively mirror the energy they encounter, and when they sense composure and clarity, they respond with the same, deepening trust and mutual regard. Ultimately, speaking from calm confidence is a reflection of self-awareness and self-possession. It communicates that you are not dependent on others' opinions to validate your worth, and that your interactions are driven by truth, not fear. This quiet authority is profoundly attractive, profoundly respected, and fundamentally transformative in every relationship it touches. There is an extraordinary power in the simple declaration, "I know who I am." These words are not just a statement, they are an embodiment of self-awareness, self-respect, and inner authority. When a man truly inhabits this understanding, it transforms the way he engages with the world and with those around him. It signals that he is grounded, that his sense of worth is internal, and that he no longer seeks permission or validation from others to affirm his value. This quiet confidence resonates deeply because it communicates stability and clarity, qualities that are universally compelling and deeply respected. When a man knows himself, his presence alone communicates a standard of how he expects to be treated, a standard of emotional integrity, and a standard of relational authenticity. Knowing who you are eliminates the need for constant reassurance. Every action, every decision, every word comes from a place of authenticity rather than fear. You no longer perform to impress, persuade, or please. You act in alignment with your values, your principles, and your truth. This self-possession is magnetic because it reflects a life lived with intention rather than reaction. Others are drawn to it unconsciously because it communicates emotional maturity and a secure sense of identity. Women, in particular, sense the difference between a man who is rooted in his own truth and one who seeks affirmation externally. The man who knows himself engages without neediness, sets boundaries without guilt, and communicates without defensiveness. Saying "I know who I am" also reshapes relational dynamics. It transforms interactions from subtle negotiation to genuine connection. When you are certain of your own value, you no longer tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or misalignment. You create a space in which others must meet you with honesty and consideration. Your clarity and self-possession act as a mirror, reflecting the energy and behavior you expect. In doing so, respect naturally emerges not because you demand it, but because your inner certainty communicates it effortlessly. People respond to strength of character more than charm, more than words, more than effort. The rootedness of self-awareness is visible, palpable, and difficult to ignore. Moreover, Knowing yourself fosters freedom. You are liberated from the traps of comparison, approval-seeking, and insecurity. You navigate relationships, decisions, and challenges with a calm authority because your worth does not fluctuate based on external feedback. This freedom is inherently attractive because it signals emotional independence, resilience, and authenticity. The man who knows himself cannot be swayed by petty judgments or superficial games, and this constancy inspires admiration and respect. Ultimately, this declaration is an invitation to embody self-possession in every moment. It is not about arrogance or detachment, but about alignment with your values, your truth, and your presence. When you speak, act, and live from this foundation, you no longer need to chase respect or validation, because it flows naturally toward the man who has claimed himself fully.